If you're looking to buy an extractor, make sure to watch this video first because a lot of things have changed over the last several years. What's going on, guys? My name's Luke. I'm a pro detailer based out of Nashville, Tennessee. Now, I've created many videos on extractor topics, which ones to buy, which ones to stay away from, what I look for when I'm purchasing an extractor. But as with all industries, the detailing industry has developed a lot relatively recently in just the last couple years. And so I want to put a few extractors side by side to give you a bit of a guide as you are thinking about buying one and talking about three main features. Number one, size. Number two, portability. And number three, the power. So many of you guys have probably seen in different videos, different detailers use the Bissell Spot Pro Clean or the Bissell Little Green machine, or even something like the Rug Doctor, which is that little red machine that's basically the same thing but a little bit harder to use. These little extractors can be fantastic for small jobs with detailers who are not dealing with nasty cars, and they end up being really, really easy to tote around in terms of size and portability, but they obviously lack in power. Now, I'll give you the specific scenario when I pull out a machine like this because all of the extractors I'm talking about right now are actual extractors that I own. For example, if I pull out the Bissell Spot Pro Clean, I'm going to be using that particular machine probably just to extract water from floor mats that I have kind of extreme cleaned and doused in liquid. The only reason for that is because in situations where I'm extreme cleaning floor mats like that, I'm going to be letting those mats sit in the sun, and all I want to do is pull out the excess water, not all of it, and not trying to get it dry quickly, just enough to put it out in the sun and let it dry. And because that machine is so small and so easy to hook up and throw around, it's not worth my time getting out a larger extractor when the only thing I'm doing is pulling out water. The only other situation that I would use an extractor like that in is if I'm dealing with relatively old upholstery that isn't manufactured in the same way that new tight weave mesh fabric is, and it's a really small stain. I'm gonna do most of the work on the front end with treating it with different chemicals, particular chemical combinations, brushing it, agitating it, and so the extractor doesn't need to be the 10 out of 10 extractor because I'm doing almost all the work for a small stain on the front end. So the Bissell Spot Pro gets a 10 out of 10 in terms of portability, 10 out of 10 in terms of size. It's extremely easy to use, but probably more like a 4 out of 10, maybe 3 out of 10 in terms of power. It's not the most powerful suction, and things like the spray trigger end up breaking over time. The other plus with this machine is that that tiny head, because it's so small, can fit in really tight spaces. Now let's move on to the Aqua Pro Vac. This is a machine that sits at a higher price point than something like the Bissell Spot Pro, but a lower price point than the more expensive extractors that detailers normally have their eyes on. So it ends up being a really attractive option for mobile detailers who are in the beginning stages and who need a solution to their extracting problem without breaking the bank. And that's really how I've spoken about this extractor for most of the time that I've ever shown it on the channel. It's got two different buttons on the back, one for the suction, one for the water, and it's extremely easy to use, very self-explanatory, and the size is a little bit bigger than something like the Spot Pro, but it's much smaller than something like the Mighty. And so when you're comparing the sizes, it actually works as this perfect leveling up from a much more modest extractor like the Bissell or the Rug Doctor without having to spend a bunch of money. Now, in terms of its power or its ability to lift water out of the carpet, because that's really the main thing we're looking at when we're dealing with extractors, the Aqua Pro Vac probably gets somewhere around a 6 or a 7 out of 10. It definitely will cover what you need for 95% of situations, assuming that you're front loading the work by using the right chemical combinations. In terms of size and portability, it gets a 10 out of 10. It's very easy to use, very easy to tote around. I like the fact that it's got really high quality caster wheels on it so I can roll it around. It's got plenty of length in the hose, and it's a great overall extractor. It does not have any features like heating, and it's not the most powerful extractor. When you're sitting under $1,000 for an extractor, historically speaking, and that's changing now, and I'm about to get to that in the video, but you generally don't get a lot of power. And so when you sacrifice paying that higher price point, you also sacrifice some of the power. Like I said, a lot of detailers are really attracted to this particular model of extractor because it sits at that mid-range price point, but it gives them some professional results. Now, in the nature of full transparency and being totally honest with you guys, there is an option that I do think actually serves that particular type of detailer much better than potentially something like the Aqua Pro Vac nowadays. I'll get to that in just a second, but in terms of size and portability, like I said, 10 out of 10. Power, I would probably give the Aqua Pro Vac somewhere around 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. So it is a step above something smaller, but it's really not a huge leap forward. Now, the last extractor before I want to give you guys the solution that I think is probably best for most people is the Mighty Light 8070. This is a more expensive extractor sitting around $1,200, but the reason the price shoots up is probably more than anything due to the fact that it can heat up water, and it is a hot water extracting machine. Now, in addition to it being a hot water extraction machine, it is also extremely high quality. Everything from the actual build of the machine itself to the hose to the Mighty head that's on the end to the way the trigger actually actually sprays out the water, in terms of pressure, atomizing the water lift, all of it is really, really awesome. And I've used this machine at this point hundreds of different situations, just like the Aqua Pro Vac. That being said, the only time I really pull out the Mighty Light 8070 is if I'm dealing with a car that I judge needs hot water extraction. Most of the time, you can get away again with front loading the work, with doing things like different chemical combinations to really get great results without an extractor anyway, so that when you do introduce an extractor, you get perfect results. Well, a lot of detailers overestimate what they're going to be able to do with hot water. And when you have a heated extractor, you realize very quickly, oh wow, the results that I'm getting aren't all that much different from the non-heated water extractor that I was using before. And because of that, the higher price point makes sense because you're paying for a more expensive machine that has more capability, but in real world application, it actually doesn't make all that much of a difference. So I only reach for this extractor if I'm dealing with an absolutely disgusting car with carpet that probably should just be thrown away, but we're trying to restore it anyways. I would probably give the Mighty Light 8070 a 5 out of 10 in terms of portability, and probably more like a 7 out of 10 in terms of size, because even for a mobile detailer, it's not the size that really trips you up. It's more the weight of the machine and trying to take it from location to location if you're not a stationary detailer. Stationary detailers should have absolutely no problem with this machine whatsoever, but in terms of power and let's just say performance overall, I would probably give this machine something like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. Now you guys are probably anticipating this, but the reality is, like I said, things change over time in the detailing world. And while yes, at different times I've talked about the Bissell, at different times I've talked about the Aqua Pro Vac, and at different times I still talk about the Mighty Light 8070, my primary suggestion for most of you in terms of which extractor you should buy, I think has probably officially changed to building your own extractor with the famous rigid 4-gallon shop vac. The rigid 4-gallon shop vac is of course traditionally a vacuum, but it can be turned into an extractor if you simply replace the dry filter with the wet filter, put of course an extractor hose with an air hose used for water on the machine, and then attach something like a Mighty extractor head to the end of that hose. Now there is a company called Rip Clean that I'll hook up in the YouTube description box below. This video is not sponsored by them at all, but they actually took the work out of building your own extractor and they created their own version of an extractor hose with a water hose with an extractor head that you can just buy and hook onto your vacuum. The reason why I love the rigid building your own extractor approach is because it sits at the same exact price point as purchasing something potentially like the Aqua Pro Vac, and the portability and size are of course there. That's why most people purchase this vacuum as detailers anyways. It's got a ton of power packed into a really small machine. In addition to that, I would argue that it's probably easier to use a machine like a vacuum as an extractor rather than a dedicated extractor, because you're hooking up directly to the hose, so you don't have to fool with a clean water tank, and the vacuum is only made up of so many parts. You have the top where the motor sits, you've got the filter, and then you've got the actual canister or the basin. And so you don't have to fool with a bunch of different stuff, emptying waste tanks, trying to get clean tanks, trying not to spill water. It's just a regular vacuum, which also means that it can suck up a ton of debris. And so I like this machine because I don't like putting in a ton of vacuuming work and preemptive work before I extract anyways. And so this is the perfect crossroads between convenience, size, portability, price, but more than anything, probably power. This has got like a 5.0 horsepower motor on it. That's another reason why detailers love this vacuum. And so turning it into an extractor only makes sense because it's so powerful. Now, in order to build an extractor like this, all you would need to do is actually purchase the vacuum itself and then purchase the extractor kit from Rip Clean, and you would be ready to go hook up to a hose. The only difference between this and potentially any other extractor that I talked about other than its power that I already mentioned is going to be the fact that it does not have a hot water feature, obviously, if you're hooked up to just regular tap water. Now, there are adapters that can be screwed into something like a kitchen sink if you potentially are in a garage where there is a sink and hot water, and of course that would give you access to hot water. But other than that, in my opinion, you really don't need hot water 95% of the time anyways. And so this is kind of an official statement from me saying, you know, I've suggested a lot of extractors in the past, but the reality is when you have a company creating kind of a done-for-you solution like they have with the extractor kit, and then you have this reliable tool that's super easy to use and makes the entire extraction process so much easier, like the rigid vacuum, because of its power, size, and the fact that it's a vacuum and you're dealing with really simple parts. Honestly, I don't know if I would purchase any other type of extractor nowadays if I was purchasing my first one. So guys, I will link up the build your own extractor kit as well as the vacuum that I'm talking about in the YouTube description box below, so that if you're interested in doing that, you can go ahead and just get the tools and products you need. And I'll also link up any of the tools or products I mentioned in this video as well beneath that, just so you can check them out if you're interested. And guys, as always, if you're interested in the top 12 tools and products products that I suggest for any detailer anywhere, that list will be available to you as well. If you like this video, make sure to extract the like button by clicking it and turning it blue so that I know this content was valuable to you. And as always, from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I will see you guys in the next video.